All right, so welcome to our asynchronous class. Today I will be presenting via video recorded lecture our lessons in order for us to catch up. Before anything else, I would like to remind everyone that please ensure to finish this video in order for you to fully grasp the content of this lesson. And our lessons are integrative. That means that the concepts explained in the previous lessons a lesson will still be used on the succeeding and the future lessons, including other courses in the next semester to come. Okay, so we are now at the lesson 3, and this is the policy environment and policy analysis. One important thing or one important note that I would like to remind you is that one of our core competency is understanding how policies work, at the same time how policies are made, and how we should actually fit the policies we are making into the needs of the people to make it responsive at the same time transformative. Okay? Kadalasan kasi sa Pilipinas ngayon, madaming mga polisiya yung mga papogi lamang or kaya mga mema lamang, no? Para lang may masabing magawa or para lang maging ceremonial or kaya maging design na lamang, no? Uh, in this lesson, we will try to answer two questions. Number one, why is it na ganito yung policy natin sa Pilipinas? And number two, paano nga ba nagta-thrive or umuusbong ang isang polisiya? No? Well, of course, when you have taken your ResMath in PA1 and PA2, nakita ninyo na the very beginning or the genesis of policy is to identify the problem emerging and even prevailing in a certain location until maging programa ito or batas, okay? Kaya nga dito sa course natin ngayon, okay, it's public policy and program administration because the output of a certain study on a problem can be a law, an ordinance, or even a program. No? So before we continue, of course, let me just say it outright kung ano nga ba yung intended learning outcomes natin. So number one, you are expected to be able to explain the components of the policy environment and their influence on policy making. Secondly, you should be able now to describe the Philippine policy environment, its key features, and at the same time, the current challenges. Number three, um, you should be able to identify the stages of the policy cycle using real examples. Number four, you compare now the three major policymaking models. In this lesson, you will be able to learn Anderson model, the Creel and the Tosun model, and the Mendoza's model. Okay, and number five, to apply the policy cycle to real current Philippine policy situation. So later on, I will be attaching an asynchronous activity wherein um, you will be making a flowchart. That's number one of how policies are made in three governance levels in the Philippines. We have the national level, composed of the Philippine Congress, the Senate, and the House of Representatives. Number two, component local government units, policy-making body. We have the Sangguniang Bayan for municipalities and Sangguniang Lungsod for the cities, component cities, and of course, Sangguniang Barangay for the barangay level. You have to notice that in its entire essence, pare-pareho lamang po kung paano ginagawa o binubuo ang mga batas. Of course, nandiyan yung proposal, yung tatlong pagbasa, at yung approval. But you would be able to determine later on the differences based on the level. That's what I want you to showcase now on the flow chart that you will be making. Okay. Now, before we start, no, even if this is an asynchronous class, I would like you to ponder on this question. When you hear the phrase policy environment, what comes into your mind? You know, what shapes the conditions in which the policies get made? Now, I would like to emphasize that there's no wrong answer here. Okay, this is about activating what you already know. Okay, because in our lessons, tatlo ang focus natin: learn new things, relearn what you have learned before, and unlearn those things that are already obsolete or those are not actually useful in your understanding. Now, focus lang tayo, no? Policy environment. This is not quite technical though, because it can actually refer to anything that you can think of when you hear the word environment, and then you just coin the word policy. Okay? Now, on the second note, ano naman sa tingin ninyo ang humuhubog sa mga kondisyon? What are the factors? Ano yung mga salik, no, na nakaapekto sa paggawa ng polisiya? Okay? So you can just pause this one and then write your answers to your notes, perhaps, so that on the next face-to-face class, we could actually review our lessons and then you can share your answers. Okay. Another question that I wanted to ponder on is the most recent Philippine law or government program that you have encountered, that you have availed, or that you have experienced, no? Sa tingin ninyo, paano nabuo itong pulisiya na ito? Saan nanggaling, no? And what steps happened before this law or this program took effect? Okay? Yun yung focus natin. And I remember when we had our introduction, when our orientation, you said that you wanted to learn deeper and appreciate the lawmaking process in the Philippines. So this is now the realization of what you have been mentioning last time as your expectation. Okay. Now, let's talk about the policy environment and what shapes a policy before it is even written. In context, when you say policy environment, other references would say this is actually called policy context or even policy milieu. No, um, this is actually the entirety of the forces, the conditions, and even the actors that influences the process of making a policy. In other words, bago pa po maisulat ang isang polisiya, may mga bagay na pong nagde-decide kung paano at ano ang posibleng mangyari para sa polisiyang ito. Okay? Let's take RH law for example. Naging masalimuot ang proseso ng pagpapasa ng RH law. Why? Okay. In the Philippines, for example, we remain to be conservative because we are leaning more on the religious perspective and even our faith, tradition, and practices. Diba? Isa sa mga malaking salik na bumangga sa pagpapasa ng RH law ay ang ating simbahan. I'm not just saying it's the Catholic Church per se, but in general, the church remain to be the biggest factor as to why the RH law um, took time to become an official law in the Philippines. Bakit? Of course, sa perspektibo ng simbahan, pro-life kasi sila. That is to maintain the natural way of reproduction. Okay? They are, in its essence, against the use of synthetic contraception. Kaya sabi nila, kumbaga, ang pagpapalawig sa paggamit ng mga contraceptions like condoms and pills would be an invitation for premarital sex. Okay? And then of course, meron kasi dati nakasaad sa isa sa mga probisyon ng panukalang batas or yung bill na tinatawag po natin, yung pag-legalize ng abortion. Although hati ang opinion ng karamihan dito, isa sa mga kinonsider before is of course yung religion. Kasi they are in political science, they are also considered as pressure groups, 'di ba? So ibig sabihin, malaki ang impluwensya nila hindi lamang sa politika ng Pilipinas but also to the perspectives of the electorates. Okay? At hindi basta-basta pwedeng mag-decide ang mga lawmaking bodies by themselves. You have to take note that the Philippines is a representative democracy. What does it mean? They represent their constituents. Ibig sabihin, ang boses dapat ng kanilang mga constituents ang maging boses sa loob ng plenaryo, ng Senado, ng Kongreso. Okay? So, hindi pwedeng sila-sila mismo ang mag-decide. Okay? Another one, okay? Simbahan din isa sa mga tumutol before bago maipasa ang RA 1425. At ano po yun? That's the Rizal Law, di ba? Sabi nila, si Jose Rizal ay hindi lamang isang filibustero but is also an herehe. Kalaban siya pareho ng Estado at ng simbahan. At ang kanyang mga nailathalang mga nobela, no, the El Filibusterismo and the Noli Me Tangere are all anti-church. So sabi nila, nilalason daw ni Jose Rizal ang um, ang mga utak ng mga Pilipino at mambabasa dahil sa kanyang mga nobela. Okay? Ano pa yung mga pressure groups or ano pa yung mga factors na nakakaapekto dito? Okay, we can also consider the minority. And who are the minority in the Philippines? Hindi yung minority sa Senado ha, hindi sina Amy Marcos ngayon, hindi sina Alan Peter Cayetano ngayon. But when I say minority groups, these are in its essence parang hindi naman lahat marginalized per se. But sabihin na nating minsang nasa laylayan o napag-iiwanan dahil nga sa bilis ng takbo ng pagbabago sa ating lipunan. Okay? So, what are those minorities? We can include indigenous peoples or indigenous cultural communities. Um, Also, kino-consider pa rin po nating minority ang mga persons with disabilities. Just a quick note, sa Pilipinas po, considered na pong discriminatory at it could actually put our persons with disabilities into double minority kapag tinawag po natin silang PWD. This is actually one thing na note ko during our training nung gender sensitivity. Okay? So, better to spell it out, say it out, no? Buuin natin na persons with disability or in a more inclusive perspective, differently abled persons. Okay? Bakit? Kasi for example, yung mga um, merong blindness, 'di ba? Sabi nila, nawala yung sense of sight nila, pero lumalakas yung ibang mga senses nila. Kaya they are differently able, okay? But the thing or but my point here is that kailangan ipalaganap natin yung respeto. Okay? So I do hope that you have already gotten the context of what policy environment is. All factors that may influence the process of making laws in a certain location. Okay? Now, you have to take note as well that wala pong batas na nanggaling sa isolation or just because naisip lang bigla ng isang tao, ipapatupad na niya. Okay? It must go through a certain process. Now, every public policy is shaped by the environment surrounding it, like political perspective. But yung mga taong inihalal natin, of course, may kani-kanya silang advokasya. Okay? Kung ang ibinoto natin ay pro-environment, expect natin na lahat ng kanyang mga adhikain ay para sa kalikasan. Okay? I still remember Gina Lopez, okay? The former DENR Secretary Gina Lopez, who unfortunately was denied of her appointment kasi nga binangga niya yung mga malalaking politiko. And these malalaking politiko are said to be associated with or kaya sila yung mga may-ari ng minahan na ipinasara ni Gina Lopez before. You have to take note that during the tenure of Gina Lopez, kahit short-lived lang yung tenure niya, napasara niya yung karamihan sa mga minahan. Unfortunately, nung siya po ay tinanggal sa DENR, bumalik na naman ang industriya ng pagmimina sa Pilipinas. Don't get me wrong, mining is one of the most important na economic resource ng Pilipinas. Of course, dahil sa mga minerals po, mayaman tayo sa minerals, pero we cannot actually deny the fact about its environmental consequences. 'Di ba? Ngayon, mainit na issue ang Pax Silica, which by the way, I am proud, no, na nakikita ko 'tong mga estudyante ko very much aware of what Pax Silica is, its economic and environmental implications. Huwag nating gayahin yung mga opisyales po natin na inihalal po natin subalit wala pong idea patungkol sa kung anong mga umiiral na isyong panlipunan, no? Binabayaran sila na napakalaki sa pamahalaan, and then they are not much aware of these things, and they are expected to be, no? Because they are part of the government to which they should be protecting the interests of the Filipinos and not to promote the interests of other countries like America for that matter. But nonetheless, okay, another factor would be social. Okay, diyan papasok yung ating religion, ating sex and gender, ating age, etc. Okay, of course, law can be shaped by our legal implications. In the Philippines, you cannot pass a law or an ordinance that is repugnant to our constitution. Ibig sabihin, we observe constitutional supremacy, that the Constitution is the mother or supreme law of the land, and wala pong batas ang dapat tumaliwas or kumontra sa Constitution. If it is repugnant, then it should be repealed. No? And then of course, technological implications. Dahil sa pagbabago ng panahon at pag-unlad, pag-usbong ng makabagong teknolohiya, niyayakap na rin po natin ang ideolohiya ng paggawa ng batas sa pamamagitan ng generative AI. Of course, we have to consider international perspectives. We have our foreign relations, our international law, di ba? Kaya nga nakalagay sa ating constitution that there is actually what we call as corporation um, law. Corporation um, principle of incorporation, 'di ba? Na yung mga batas, mga kasunduan na pinirmahan ng Pilipinas sa pandaigdigang platform would form part the law of the land. Okay? Katulad nung ating pinirmahan dati sa pagiging kasapi natin sa ICC, sa UN, and even yung naipanalo po nating arbitral ruling sa West Philippine Sea, no? Because we are actually a signatory of the UNCLOS or the United Nations Convention on the Law of the Sea. That could be a factor, 'di ba? Yung ating Clean Air Act, Clean Water Act, these are actually international treaties that we have signed, and it formed part now as the law of the land. Okay? And of course, other natural forces like our disasters and even force majeure, no? They actually make some policies, and that those other and those others that are unthinkable per se. Okay? And in this context, mas maiintindihan natin that policies are like a living ecosystem, 'di ba? You know what ecosystem is, right? And this is not just a one-time decision. Hindi po siya isang bagsakan na naisip lang kagabi, ipapasa agad. Okay? One of the hot topics right now is yung proposal again, and I think naaprubahan na po siya sa mababang kapulungan, yung pag-postpone na naman muli ng BSKE, no? Originally, it should be year 2025, if I'm not mistaken. Tapos na-postpone siya into November 2026. Ngayon, ang proposal na naman ay sa 2028, isasabay na po siya sa national and local elections for budget purposes. Okay? Now, according to David Easton, he is actually a political scientist. Again ha, political science ang political science ay hindi lamang tungkol sa politika ng kulay na pula, ng kulay na pink, ng kulay na dilaw. When you say political sciences, this refers now to the science and art of making decisions. And these decisions can be translated into policies. Okay? So according to David Easton, he described the political system as embedded in an environment that it must continuously respond in order to survive. Okay? Tuloy-tuloy po ito na proseso. Okay? Kasi the moment it stops, the political system dies. No? Example, processing of demands. Diba? Oh, we have to take note that our constituents are demanding, no? Okay? Demanding ang mga tao. Sana hindi matigil tong recording ko. Okay? Nag-brown out kasi. Anyway, and of course, the society needs support from the policy inputs na ipinatutupad po natin. Okay? Kaya nga para itong active IPO. What is IPO again in research? That's the input process output model. Okay? Anong input? Mga problema, suliranin, hinaing ng mga tao, ng ating mga kababayan. And then it will be processed through deliberations, policy making. And what is the output? Either a law, policy, an ordinance, etc. Okay? Now, in the POV in the POV of Easton, okay, let's try to visualize this one. Ito yung sasabi ko sa inyong IPO. Okay? So, ano ang input? Okay? The demands of the people include yung mga public concerns po natin, yung mga protesta po natin, which by the way, in the Philippines ay legal. Okay? Hindi po terorismo ang pagpoprotesta. Taliwas po sa ipinapakalat po nila. Kaya nga po usong-uso ang red tagging. Okay? Pero, you have to ensure also na, number one, alam mo yung pinaglalaban mo. Number two, ginagawa mo to sa paraang legal nang hindi ka naninira ng mga pampublikong mga ari-arian kasi kadalasan sa mga rallyista, naninira sila ng mga government properties, sinisira yung mga traffic lights. Illegal na po yan. Pero kung ito ay ginawa mo sa matiwasay na pamamaraan, okay, like you actually launch a peaceful protest calling out the government for its inefficiency and holding them accountable for their actions, then it's okay. It's not terrorism per se. Okay? And of course, nagkakaroon din tayo ng tinatawag nating needs assessment. Okay? So ano yung mga support na kinakailangan ng pamahalaan for this one? Para po maisakatuparan yung mga hinihingi ng ating mga mamamayan, dapat magbayad sila ng buwis, sumunod sila sa mga batas at kung ano-ano pa. Okay? All right. So, now these inputs will be processed. Ano po yung prosesong pagdaraanan po nila? Okay? Of course, magdedebate yan sa loob ng plenaryo. Magkakaroon ng decision-making process and of course, bureaucratic system. Okay? Sino-sino yung mga involved dito? Of course, the Congress or the legislative branch, no? The lawmaking body, the president, and even other government agencies. Okay? At yung deliberation po nila, ang output po nito ay mga batas, mga programa, at of course, yung appropriation na tinatawag natin or yung budget. Okay? And the feedback would be, of course, babalik po yan sa input and then sila po yung makakaranas ng ganitong proseso. Okay? Now, let's just have a quick check-in. A wave of public complaints about jeepney fare hikes reaches the Congress. In Easton's model, what is this complaint an example of? Definitely, this is a demand or an input to the policy. May protesta. Tumataas na naman ang presyo ng pamasahe. So, input po yan. Okay? Now, in order for us to better understand what shapes our policy, okay, I will present you 7 forces. These 7 forces now will help us understand the policy environment in the Philippines. Okay? Okay. Now, let's begin with the first one. Okay, the first one is the political environment. It includes now power dynamics, the parties, and even elections. Okay, according to Max Weber, which is actually our study in politics and administration, politics is the distribution of power among government branches, political parties, interest groups, and electoral cycles that shapes what is politically possible. Ibig sabihin po niyan, kung titignan natin sa definition ni Laswell na who gets what, how, and when, in politics sa perspective ni Weber, this is more on how we distribute power, how we allocate resources. Okay? Kasi economista si Weber eh. Okay? In the Philippines, for example, the president wields significant policy influence. Bakit? Okay? Because through executive orders and control over the national budget. Okay? So kung ano yung kagustuhan at policy direction ng administration, siya yung tunay na masusunod, di ba? May mga pagkakataon pa he could certify the bill as urgent na kailangang ipasa agad. That could be. Okay? When you say allocation or distribution of power, okay, ito yung nawi-witness natin sa Pilipinas na may specific powers vested sa presidente, meron din sa Kongreso, at meron din sa Hudikatura. Therefore, we are distributing the power. Hindi po concentrated sa iisang tao lamang, kundi ang mga kapangyarihan ay nahiwa-hiwalay po sa iba't ibang mga tao at opisina. This is so because we need to observe what we call now as checks and balances. Okay? Number 2 po natin ay ang ating economic environment. It refers now to the budget, growth, and inflation. No? According to Weber, the state of national and sabi nito, ang economic environment is the state of national and local economy. We have the gross domestic product, yung pagtaas or paglago po nito, meron din yung inflation, unemployment, fiscal capacity. These things shape which policies are affordable. When you say affordable, yung kumbaga efficient tayo. When you say efficient, maganda yung resulta pero hindi mahal. Okay? Or you are trying to maximize the result or the output, the outcome without spending too much. Okay? In the Philippines, for example, a tight national budget limits policy options. Kung maliit or nagtitipid ang gobyerno sa budget, of course, may mga polisiyang hindi pa maipapasa or may mga programang hindi pa maipatutupad, no? However, a growing economy opens room for new programs and expanded services. Ito naman yung sa part ng Pax Silica. If we are talking about the economic implications of Pax Silica, natural, madaming trabaho because number one, yung infrastructure. Kailangan magtayo ng mga malalaking mga pasilidad. So, kailangan mag-hire ng maraming mga construction workers. And then kapag naipatayo ito, maraming mga i-hire na mga factory workers. So, dito magbo-boom ang ating economy. Kung ang consideration lamang po natin ay sa economic environment. Okay? Take note nyo po yan ha, kung economic lamang. Okay? Ngayon, dumako tayo sa part ng social environment. It refers now to demographics, culture, and opinion. Okay? So according to Weber, the social environment refers now to demographic trends, cultural values, social inequalities, and public opinion that shape now which issues rise to become policy priorities. For example, democratic trends. Napansin ng PSA na pabata ng pabata ang mga nanganganak. Therefore, they have declared an alarming increase in the cases of teenage pregnancy. That is a democratic trend. Therefore, ano ang gagawin ng policymakers? They have to prioritize now campaigns against teenage pregnancy. Papalawigin nila ang kampanya kontra sa paagang pagbubuntis sa pamamagitan ng, okay, of course, yun nasa RH law. Okay? Democratic trends, another example, tumataas ang kaso ng, of course, sorry for this word, trigger warning, I will mention words that may refer to mental health issues, okay? Tumataas ang kaso ng suicide rate sa La Union. At karamihan sa mga nagpapakamatay daw ay mga teenagers na lalaki. That could be a demographic trend. So kailangan magkaroon ng intervention. Gagawa ng polisiya para i-promote ang mental health sa mga kalalakihan. Okay? Of course, cultural values. Okay? Sabi nila, respetuhin natin ang practices ng ibang mga bayan kung saan legal ang pagkain ng karne ng aso. Dahil nga malamig sa lugar nila, kailangan may pampainit sa katawan. Kasi sabi po nila, kapag po ikaw ay kumain ng karne ng aso, mainit ito sa katawan. Cultural values. Pero sabi ng POS, okay, or Philippine Animal Welfare Society, hindi pwedeng gawing karne ang aso. They are actually pets. Di ba? Nagkakaroon na ng competing interest. Okay? Social inequalities as well. Di ba? Up until now, ang mga babae ay tumatanggap ng mas mababang sahod as compared sa mga lalaki. Nagkakaroon pa rin ng diskriminasyon sa mga kasapi ng LGBTQIA+ community. Nagkakaroon pa din po ng discrimination sa ating mga indigenous peoples. So these are factors that may actually shape our policies. Okay? Public opinion as well, 'di ba? The way people express their sentiments in the social media can be a factor, 'di ba? Kung ang clamor ay class suspension, class suspension, 'di ba? Minsan pinapakinggan din 'yan ng LGU. Okay? So example natin is the regional diversity. Iba-iba tayo ng mga rehiyon and composition po nito. Nagkakaiba tayo sa lengguwahe, sa paniniwala. Okay? Yung poverty incidence din po. Okay? Yun yung mga factors na pwedeng makaapekto kung bakit nabubuo ang isang batas. Okay, next po tayo, legal or constitutional environment. These are now the boundaries set by our law. And of course, primarily, it's the Constitution, the statutes or mga batas, and even judicial decisions or jurisprudence, and even treaty obligations that define the legal boundaries within which any policy must be made. Okay? For example, the 1987 Constitution and the Local Government code set hard limits what any administration can legally do para po hindi po sila lumagpas sa kanilang jurisdiction at hindi po nila abusuhin ang kanilang mga kapangyarihan. Of course, ipinagbabawal ng konstitusyon ang pag-i-impose ng death penalty because this is a violation now of the human rights as enshrined in the Bill of Rights or Article 3 of the 1987 Philippine Constitution. Of course, technological environment, no, the digitalization and even e-governance setup. In the advancement of technology, digitalization, the rise and use of social media, you have your e-governance, it creates entirely new policy challenges and opportunities. Take note guys na hindi po e-governance kung Facebook lamang ang ginagamit ng isang LGU, no? Facebook is just one of the means for e-governance, but it's not the entirety of e-governance setup. Okay? Next po tayo, we have international or global environment. I believe so that you have already taken your contemporary world at pinag-uusapan po doon yung sinasabi po nating globalization. Dito po papasok yun, no? We have foreign aid, ayuda ng mga taga-ibang bansa, no? International agreements or yung mga treaties po natin, and even global economic pressures that reach inward and they shape now our domestic policy choices. Okay? The way we shape our relationship with America, with China, Japan, and even ASEAN, yung pong pag-integrate po natin ng Sustainable Development Goals. These are international or global policy environment. Okay? Next po tayo. We also have the natural or physical environment. Ito na po yung mismong kalikasan po natin. Okay? So it involves our geography, our climate, and even disaster risks. No? Geographic conditions, natural resources, climate change, and even disaster risks are environmental factors no policymaker should ignore. Anong ibig sabihin po niyan? Of course, kung binabaha ang inyong LGU, ano ang iyong response? Magpatayo ng genuine and of course legal na flood control project. Hindi po dapat galing sa korupsyon. Sana po maawa ang mga taong ito sa mga kababayan nila kasi tayo ang lubos-lubosang apektado. Okay? By the way, pag narating po ninyo itong part ng video po ito, you might be wondering, ala, nagdudot met, maaraw naman, signal number 2, fake news ang pag-asa. Mali, okay? Ang ibig sabihin po ng signal number 2 ay warning po ito na sa susunod na 24 hours, doon po natin mararanasan yung hagupit at pagbayo ni Maymay. Hindi po ibig sabihin ng signal number 2, hahangin na agad. Hindi po yun. Kaya po tayo binibigyan ng maagang warning para makapaghanda po tayo within the next 24 hours. Ganon din po sa konteksto ng signal number 1, nagbara, fake news, data na pag-asa. Mali again. Okay? Ang signal number 1 po ay warning ng pag-asa na in the next 36 hours, mararanasan po natin yung mga malalakas na hangin at posibleng pag-ulan. Okay? Ang signal warning po ay tumutukoy sa wind power. Kaya nga, tropical cyclone warning wind signal. Okay? TCWS. Okay? Sana po malinaw po yan. At ayaw po makakita sa Facebook ng mga nagpo-post na estudyante ko na, fake news, pag-asa, signal number 2, maaraw mo, tapanggabi ako nagklase. Balang. Huwag ganun. Okay? Next tayo. Okay. Quick check-in tayo. A province revises its infrastructure plans after a credit downgrade shrinks its borrowing capacity. Which component of the policy environment is most directly at work? Economic ito. Bumaba yung kakayahan ng ating LGU na magpatupad ng mga proyekto pang infrastruktura kasi bumaba yung capacity nila na umutang or mag-loan. Okay? So bumaba yung budget nila. Okay. Natural environment in action. Rebuilding yung Project NOAA. Okay, in 2011, ang Pilipinas po ay nag-launch nung tinatawag nating nationwide Operational Assessment of Hazards or Project NOAA. Okay? Ito po ay matapos yung bagyong Sendong na kumitil ng halos 2,500 na tao. Diba? Ang lala. That was 2011. Yun din ata yung taon ng Yolanda. Okay? Kaya po nila nilaunch yung si NOAA. Okay? Ngayon, unfortunately, na namatay. Namatay si Project NOAA. Bakit? Wala daw kasing budget. See, there are important and life-saving projects and programs of the government na sana tuloy-tuloy, yun nga lang, walang pondo. Okay? Another example para mas maintindihan niyo. Okay? Naipasa yung universal access to free and quality tertiary education, di ba? Kaya nga libre kayong nakapag-aral sa mga state universities and colleges. What if itinigil ng Kongreso ang paglalaan ng pondo at tinanggal ito sa GAA or General Appropriations Act? Sa tingin ninyo, magpapatuloy pa ang libreng edukasyon? Hindi na po. Mawawala po. Madaming maapektuhan. Okay? Another example would be technological environment. Ito yung PhilSys. Di ba? Anong legal basis ng PhilSys? RA 11055. No? Dito na kayo magkakaroon daw ng national ID. So, however, in 2026, okay, nagkaroon na ng development. Pwede nyo nang i-download ang inyong PhilSys sa inyong eGovPH app. Oh, by the way, this is my requirement. Download and install the eGovPH app. Okay? Mag-surprise inspection ako at magkakaroon ng plus points yung mga students na may eGovPH app. Why? Public administration tayo. Dapat tayo yung unang nakakaalam sa tamang paraan ng pag-access ng mga government services po natin. Okay? Yun po yun. Now, maikling pahinga lang po. Okay? Of the 7 components, which one most shapes policy decisions in your own municipality or barangay? Sige nga po. Sa 7 diniscuss ko po na environment ng polisiya po natin, alin po sa mga ito ang lubos na nakakaapekto sa pagbuo ng polisiya sa inyong municipality or sa inyong barangay? Take that down. Okay? Now, let's continue with the next part of our lesson. Okay, we have the Philippine policy environment, and I will provide you 6 defining features. And please take note of that. Okay, so the Philippine policy making is shaped by a distinctive set of historical, institutional, and socio-political factors. These are both an opportunity and a constant challenge. Okay, let's begin with the first one. We have the Philippines is a democratic country but fragmented system. Demokrasi tayo pero hiwa-hiwalay kasi yung ating mga government agencies. They act as if they are superiors as against another. Okay? So the Philippines operates under a presidential system. It is so true because we have a president which is enshrined in our constitution. Okay? With democratic institution. Kaya nga sabi sa Article 2 ng ating constitution, the Philippines is a democratic republican state. Wow! Diba? But however, political fragmentation, ibig sabihin po niyan, marami po tayong mga political parties. Example, PDP Laban, Liberal, Una, mga ganun. Okay. Marami sa kanila magaganda yung kanilang ipinaglalabang mga advokasya, pero hindi naman nila ito naisa sa katuparan. Okay? Mahina yung ideological coherence po nila. This actually makes sustained policy reform difficult. Pabago-bago. Pag nag-iba at tayo ng party, for example, ang nanalong presidente ay galing sa PDP laban, of course, iba ang kanilang ideology as compared sa nanalong Liberal Party, for example. Ganun po yun. Okay? Another one is that the Philippines is decentralized. Our governance style is decentralized as according to RA 7160. We are unitary. Yes, that's correct. We are unitary kasi nga iisa yung istrukturang sinusundan natin, pero the powers are distributed in a decentralized perspective. What does it mean? The Local Government Code of 1991 devolved significant powers to provinces, cities, municipalities, and barangays. I do hope that your local and regional governance discuss comprehensively what is devolution of power as against now decentralization and even delegation of powers. Ibig sabihin po nito, according to LGC, ang paggawa ng batas ay pwede na pong gawin sa iba't ibang mga level ng pamamahala nang sabay-sabay, hindi lamang inaantay kung ano ang kautusan mula sa Maynila sa pamamagitan ng Kongreso. Ibig sabihin po niyan, pwede na pong gumawa ng sari-sariling mga batas at ordinansa po ang mga LGU mula probinsya, mula lungsod at bayan at even barangay kasi they are already empowered by the local government code as enshrined it is devolution clauses. Okay? Another one is that we are of an active civil society. Marami po sa mga Pilipino ay aktibong kasapi, an active member of a civil society sector. Ito po yung tinatawag nating mga NGO or non-government organizations. We have people's organization, we have faith-based groups, and even media as the partner now of the government in public service and communication. They actively participate in policy advocacy and they are considered the watchdogs of the government. Kaya papansin ninyo, di ba, nagkakaroon ng public consultation because of this civil society. Okay? Another one, we have persistent poverty and of course inequality. Yes, part and parcel po ito ng ating policy making ecosystem. Hindi po maiiwasan na magkaroon ng say ang part na to. Kaya sabi ko nung pinag-aaralan ko noon ang SDG, it is very impossible, it is unlikely for the Philippines to achieve no poverty. SDG 1 pa lang hindi na kaya kung i-achieve ng Pilipinas in our dreams. In this economy, come on, naglolokohan tayo pag sinabi nating the Philippines can zero out poverty. It's a big no-no for me. Hindi sa wini-wish kong magkaroon ng kahirapan. No. That's not my point. My point is, kung patuloy tayong boboto ng mga politikong wala namang malasakit sa mga kapwa Pilipino at outright harap-harapan na tayong niloloko, ginagago, at of course pinagnanakawan, wala pong pagbabago. Kaya nga I keep on telling you guys, we are public administration. Tayo dapat ang unang kumikilatis sa mga politiko tumatakbo at nanghihingi ng ating mga boto. Utang na loob, please cut the practice of receiving money at sasabihin niyo sa akin, okay lang sir, inalak kay 500, 3,000. Amok mo ti ibutos ko. The fact that you have received the money, you are already part of the corruption. Trust me, guys. Diba? Agbuteng dagit nga politiko, no kas pangarigan, mangiwayat da, mangtadati kwarta, haan nga awaton kita tao, doon po sila matatakot. Ngem, No adapay lang iti mangmangted, ket addal ta iti manghawat, haanda hagbuteng, haanda hagsarteng. Okay? You have to take note that despite periods of economic growth, there's a large share of Filipinos that remain to be poor. Di ba? Kahit na po merong efforts to reduce poverty in the Philippines, if we keep on voting people who are anti-poor for that matter, wala po. Narigat. Okay? Next po tayo, there is a high vulnerability to our exposure sa mga disasters. The Philippines is not only situated in the Pacific Ring of Fire, which is vulnerable to volcanic eruption and earthquake. We are also situated in the typhoon belt. Kaya nga, 'di ba, taon-taon tayo po ay binabayo ng at least 20 na bagyo sa Pilipinas. Imagine that, 'di ba? Ganun tayo ka-strong na mga Pilipino. Pero please, wag po tayo magpapaloko sa mga sweet words sila that Filipinos are resilient. Kaya nating umiti sa gitna ng kahirapan at ng mga bagyo. Utang na loob. We have to finish that mindset. 'Di ba? Dinadaan tayo sa mga sweet words na kahit anong unos, kahit anong bagyo, kaya ng Pilipino. Kung sana lamang may sound policy tayo in terms of disaster risk reduction and management, disaster preparedness. Diba? Katulad ng ipinanukalang batas ni Miriam Defensor Santiago noon sa paghahanda ng pandemya. Ano sinabi sa kanya? Baliw ka, Miriam. Kung ano-ano naiisip mo. Diba? Fear mongering daw yung tinatawag niyang preparation sa pandemic. O nangyari noong 2020, noong 2019. Diba? Nagkaroon ng pandemic sa Pilipinas. Sinong pinaupong lead agency? AFP? Oh my God! That's a health concern and you are trying to put in place someone who is armed rather than someone who has a medical background. Come on, think of our policymakers. Kung ganyan ang desisyon nila, it will lead to the doom of the Philippines. Mas lulubog pa tayo. Diba? Mas bottom pa sa mga bottom. Diba? We are prone to disasters. The Philippines must constantly weave disaster risk reduction and climate change adaptation. Diba? Nandyan na yan. Hantay makasubli iti kalmanan nga nasaya at pailaang iti aglawlaw tayo. Diba? Kasi kagagawan din naman to ng mga ninuno po natin. This is an inherited problem. Ngayon, no hantay nga kastaso, anyang tinamnamaan gano'n the next 7 generation tayo. Baka tulak plastikan, di makita itong kayon to sa substitute. Di ba? Ngayon pa lang, binibili na ang tubig. How much more in the next 50 years? Baka pati oxygen natin, bilhin na rin po natin. If we keep on actually destroying habang nilalaspag natin ang ating kalikasan. Di ba? Of course, we have to take note that there is a deep colonial legacy. Until now, yung mindset natin ay nakapukul pa rin sa minana nating perspektibo mula sa mga nanakop po sa atin, di ba? From the Spanish and American colonial rule. We cannot blame ourselves per se. Bakit? Yung mga batas dito kasi natin ay hango sa Amerika at sa Spain. Yung civil code po natin, it is drafted and identical to that of the Spanish Civil Code. Yung mapapansin niyo, karamihan po sa mga legal principles po natin ay Spanish or Latin in nature. Yung mga ignorancia lihis na minim excusad, di ba? Yung crimen nullia sine lege, mga ganun po yan. Yan po, of course, yung constitution po natin, very Americanized po yan. Di ba? Noong nagkaroon po ng kasunduan ang Amerika at ang Pilipinas before, nasasailalim tayo sa kanilang kapangyarihan under Commonwealth at after 10 years tayo po ay lalaya, American influence pa rin po yan. Okay? At hindi lamang po yung mga nanakop po sa atin ang may impluensya, di ba? We can also consider yung modern day colonialism ng Korea, di ba? Di ba? Nalipatang mga isuman nun, ngam, kaya't mo itisang gipstal. Di ba? Ayaw mong kumain ng mga dinunggan kasi gusto mo kimchi. That's modern day colonialism. Okay? We also have Japan and many more. Sino ba lang? Basher ka? Okay. Okay. Moving forward. Okay. Let's contextualize my discussion in this example. Decentralization in practice. Okay? So we have the BARMM, First Parliament. Magkakaroon po ng election po ang Bangsamoro Autonomous Region of Muslim Mindanao on September 2026. Dito po, okay, gaganapin ang kauna-unahang parliamentary elections. Okay? Sir, bakit parliamentary na ang Mindanao? Yes po. Okay? Since they are autonomous class, they created now their own government. Okay? That is in effect because of the Bangsamoro Electoral Code, no? Which guaranteed traditional leaders like sultans, datus, and even panglimas to have a reserve a seat, no, in the parliament. Okay? Now, let's review. Okay? So ito po yung anim na sinabi ko po kanina na Philippine political environment in a nutshell. Meron tayong strong executive, decentralization, vibrant civil society. There remains to be development challenges, of course, global integration, and even digital governance for that matter. Okay? Now, which policy or which Philippine policy environment feature explains why a national law can be implemented very differently in Tagudin versus in Quezon City? That is decentralized governance under RA 7160. Okay? Now, let's talk about the policy cycle. O sige, ititigil ko muna yung video recording ko since it's already an hour. Okay? Itutuloy ko po itong next lesson sa separate na video recording para po hindi masyadong mahaba. Okay? So, mag-uumpisa po tayo sa policy cycle. Alright? So, thank you so much for staying with me and see you on the next recording. Magandang umaga at ingat po tayong lahat.